gives it back to Rush. Deep shot. Get it! What a perfect ending to a historic day. Gilbert for the win. Oh, baby! Doncic pulls up, three-pointer. Bang! Bang! It's good. Doncic wins.
Welcome back to the Respectfully Uncut podcast, NCAA Tournament edition, as we are breaking down all the first-round matchups of the 2023 NCAA Tournament. March Madness is upon us. We've already broken down two regions, and now we are going to move to the Midwest region. One quick note before we get started: we did have a play-in game tonight between Mississippi State and Mississippi State and Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh pulled the game out in a late run. They trailed for most of the game. Tight game back and forth. No team led by more than 6 the whole way, but Pittsburgh was able to pull it out by 1 point late. And so we know all the matchups now. They are set for the Midwest region. And Pittsburgh will be taking on 6 seed Iowa State. Looking at the bracket, we'll start at the top with the Houston Cougars. They're the number 1 seed, taking on the 16 seed from Northern Kentucky. And you can see here, Houston comes in 31-3, 17-1 in the American Conference, and they are ranked first in both the KenPom and net ranking systems. They have sat atop both of those ranking systems for most of the year. On the other side, Northern Kentucky comes in 22-12, 14-6. They finished tied for second in the Horizon League, but were able to win their conference tournament, which got them into the NCAA tournament. They sit at 154th in the net rankings and 161 in the KenPoms. Looking at the line here, Houston, big favorite, 19.5-point favorites. If you want to bet the Norses on the money line, you can get Northern Kentucky at plus 1350, and the total, one of the lowest totals in the first round of all the matchups, sits at 122.5. Again, I haven't really been breaking down the 116 matchups because I'm going to pick the 1 seeds in all 4 of those breakdowns. What I will do is talk a little bit about Houston, though. Houston is a team that is elite on both sides of the ball. They're top 11 in both offensive and defensive efficiency, according to KenPom. They are a team who plays an extremely slow pace. 344th of 363 teams in terms of adjusted tempo. So they play very, very slow basketball. They play half-court possessions. They want to play a grinded-out, slow-paced game. And one thing that I saw with this Houston team early in the year, which gave me some hope for them to make a deep run, was they were really shooting the ball a lot better than they had in years past. And that's been the issue with Houston. They got to the Final Four one year, but every time they made a deep run, when it came to an end, it tended to be because of a lack of offense. So early in the season, they were shooting the three-pointer at about 37% halfway through the season. They were top 50 in the country, but they've really fallen off, as you can see here on the rankings of KenPom. They're 34.5% from 3, which is 154th in the country, which means they've really struggled to shoot the ball down the stretch. 61st in 2-point percentage and just 70th in effective field goal percentage. So they've really dropped significantly shooting the ball. And that's one reason why I'm a bit weary to have the Cougars go on a deep run here. I really liked them earlier in the year. They were the team I was going to pick to win the whole thing. But for that reason and one other, I actually don't have them in my Final Four. And that second reason is the health of Marcus Sasser. Marcus Sasser is the best player for the Houston Cougars. He is their leader, their leading scorer, their best player, and their go-to guy. And he went down with a serious, what looked to be serious, groin injury in the American Championship game against the Memphis Tigers, a game in which Memphis defeated Houston by 10 and won the American Conference title over the Cougars. And Sasser, we don't have a ton of news on his injury at this point. But what I can tell you is that a groin injury is a tough one to deal with for a basketball player. the movement associated with basketball, a lot of quick movements, a lot of lateral quickness. And the thing about it is Houston really can't hide Sasser the way they play. They're one of the best defensive teams in the entire country, fourth overall in defensive efficiency, and they play a high-pressure, physical brand of basketball. You just can't hide a guy in a system like that if he is nursing an injury, and you wonder if he's even going to trot out against Northern Kentucky in this first-round matchup. Maybe something to look at if you want to consider taking Northern Kentucky here. If Sasser doesn't play, 19 and a half is a lot of points. I know Houston's a good team and they have the capability of beating teams by a lot, but missing a guy who averages north of 16 points a game for a team that does not score the ball all that well can be a massive loss. So overall, I think Houston is a team that has the ability to make a deep run, but offensively, without Sasser 100%, and a team that has really kind of been on the downtick in terms of their offensive efficiency, I'm not quite sure they're going to be able to make a deep run here. They have a tough road to the Final Four, largely because the Texas Longhorns, one of the best teams in the country, and I believe probably should have been a 1 seed, fell on that 2 line in their region. Moving on to the 8-9 matchup, we've got the Auburn Tigers taking on the Iowa Hawkeyes. My apologies on the screen. The seeding is actually incorrect on here. Iowa is the 8 seed and Auburn is actually the 9 seed. Regardless, Auburn comes in finishing 7th in the SEC with a conference record of 10-8, 20-12 overall in the season, sitting at a net ranking of 39 and a KenPom of 37. Iowa, on the other hand, 19-13 on the season overall, 11-9 in conference, and finishing 7th in the Big Ten, net ranking of 32 and a KenPom ranking of 29. And I will hand it to the committee. They did a really good job of making these 8-9 matchups complete toss-ups, and that's really what I believe this game is. Auburn, a 1-point favorite. It has gotten as low as a pick'em. Iowa, you can get at even money on the money line, I believe, in some spots, and the total sits at 152. When you look at the matchup, this is going to be a battle of two very contrasting styles. Iowa wants to get up and down, play at a fast pace, make the game erratic. They want to play this game in the high 70s to low 80s. Auburn, on the other hand, would love this game to be in the 50s or very low 60s. Much slower pace for the Tigers. Both teams come in struggling. Last 10 games for Auburn, 3-7. Iowa, on the other hand, 5-5 in their last 10, but that also includes a game at home in which they trailed to Michigan State by double digits with just about a minute to play. One of the most miraculous comebacks you'll ever see in college basketball occurred that day, and Iowa somehow was able to force overtime and win the game in overtime. Both teams lost in the first game they played in their conference tournaments, so both teams come into this really kind of reeling. Iowa, third-ranked offense in the country in adjusted efficiency according to KenPom, but 166 defensively. So they are a very good offensive team, terrible defensively. Auburn, the complete opposite. Very good defensive team, 28th in adjusted efficiency, 49th in offensive efficiency, and I think that number is actually probably too high. Auburn is abysmal shooting the ball, 224th in the country in effective field goal percentage. They are 314th in the country, as you can see right here, in three-point percentage. That is out of 363 teams. You're talking one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the country. Their two-point field goals aren't great either. They're outside the top 140 there. They really struggle. And when you look at Iowa's defense, defending the 3, defending the 2, and both outside the top 290. So this is going to be a battle of is the better offensive team going to win or is the better defensive team going to win? And to be honest, I've gone back and forth on this game 100 times. I think Iowa has a slight edge if you were to play this game on a truly neutral floor. Unfortunately for the Hawkeyes, this game is being played in Birmingham, Alabama. That's a huge factor here. So this is a somewhat home game for the Auburn Tigers. You also take into account the game is played at 6:50 Eastern time. So this is a game that's kind of in prime time. Those tend to have bigger crowds than, say, an early morning game. So, you're likely going to have a very pro Auburn crowd. That said, it's nothing like playing in a home arena, right? It's nothing like the home court advantage Auburn would have playing at home. Now, all of that said, like I said, I went back and forth on this game. I'm gonna lean Iowa. I currently have Iowa picked in my bracket. I just can't bring myself to pick an Auburn team that relied a lot on their home court advantage, that won 3 of their last 10 games down the stretch, and that just struggles so badly to shoot the ball. I think Iowa has a better chance to get this game at a frenetic pace and get a lead. And if they do that, it's going to be really tough for Auburn to hang with them. I also think one underrated factor here is that Iowa, when you look at their offensive rebounding percentage, it's 66 in the country, but it's actually even better than that in the last 15 games. They're top 25 in offensive rebound percentage in the last 10 games. I think Iowa's ability to rebound on the offensive glass is going to play a big factor. And when you look at Auburn, they are extremely poor at forcing teams to one shot. They give up a ton of offensive rebounds. Almost 32% of the shots that miss against them go for offensive rebounds. That's going to play a key role. I'm going to go with the Hawkeyes despite the pro Auburn crowd. This could change in my bracket the second before, but I think I'm leaning Hawkeyes, and I think I've settled on taking Iowa here. Next game, we're going to preview the number 5 seed Miami Hurricanes taking on the 12-seeded Drake Bulldogs. The Bulldogs come in 27-7, 15-5 in the conference. They actually finished second in the Missouri Valley. Won their conference tournament over Bradley, who was on a 17-game winning streak going into that championship game. Drake dismantled them in the championship and earned their spot in the NCAA tournament. The Miami Hurricanes, on the other hand, come in 25-7. They won the ACC regular season title, lost in the semifinals to Duke, partially due to an injury, which we will talk about here shortly. They're 35th in the KenPom, or 35th in the net rather, and 40th in the KenPom. This is a game that I really believe a lot of people have considered as a little bit of a trendy upset pick, and I really don't quite understand it. The line on this game is wild. 2.5-point favorite is Miami, the number 1 seed in the ACC, playing the number 2 seed team in the Missouri Valley Conference on a neutral floor, and it's a 2.5-point spread, and it's not moved at all. Miami you can get at minus 135 on the money line. If you like the Bulldogs, you can get them at plus 115, and the total sits at 146. I like the Hurricanes in this matchup. I'm going to tell you why for a couple of reasons. Number one is their coach, Jim Larrañaga. Larrañaga, obviously, if you don't know his story, he was a head coach at George Mason for a long time. He took the George Mason University to a Final Four, had a heck of a run there before coming over to Miami. He actually took the Hurricanes last year to an Elite Eight, and he's been to a Sweet 16 as well, which he was able to get the Hurricanes to in just his second year at Miami back in 2016. When you look at Larrañaga as a favorite in the NCAA tournament, he has one loss, and that one loss came against Loyola Chicago back in 2018. It came at the buzzer. They led by 2. Loyola Chicago hit a 3 at the buzzer following a missed free throw. And that Loyola Chicago team went on to go to the Final Four. So it's not like Miami is a team prone to upsets under Larrañaga. They have really kind of performed above expectation multiple times in the tournament, and they've really not been prone to many big upsets. When you look at the matchup here, it really comes down to a couple things. Miami's a very good offense, and Drake is more of a defensive team. Miami struggles defensively, 131st in defensive efficiency according to KenPom. But when you look at this Miami team and their numbers, they're very similar to what they looked like going into the tournament last year. And that's a team that went all the way to the Elite Eight. And so their defense bothers me. That low of a rank bothers me slightly less. largely because I think Larinaga knows how to get his team up for games, and he'll have a good game plan for whoever he faces in the first couple rounds. Drake, on the other hand, didn't even win their conference tournament, rather their conference regular season, which is why I find it odd that this line sits 2.5. I know Drake is pretty highly ranked in the KenPom for a team in the Missouri Valley, sitting at 67th, but I just think the Hurricanes are going to have too much talent here. Now, one key factor, Norchard Omier. He is the big man for Miami. He is their probably most important defensive player. Had a bad ankle turn against Duke in the semifinals of the ACC tournament. Probably cost them a chance to win the conference tournament championship. That game was tied when he went down. Miami ended up falling apart late, and Duke went on to win the conference title over Virginia the next game. If he is 100% healthy or even close to it, this game I do not believe will be close. If he doesn't play or he is hobbled by injury, I do see how the game could get closer closer to the line at 2.5. I still think Miami wins the game either way, but the more important thing is I think Miami has a real chance to make a little bit of a run here. But without Omier, I just don't see it happening. So if you are someone who is considering taking Miami on a deep run, you may want to mitigate your risk and not have them go too far with the unknown status of Omier. If you're somebody looking to back the Hurricanes on a round-to-round basis, I would consider constantly monitoring his status, because if he plays, that's going to be a big uptick for Miami. If he doesn't, they're going to struggle when they get to better competition. Like I said, I don't think they're going to struggle with Drake here, regardless of whether Omier plays or not, whether he's healthy or not. So I'm going to take the Hurricanes in this matchup. I like them to win and cover the spread, and I am considering putting a play on the Hurricanes. And I do understand that this is probably going to be a public play. But I think that line is just incorrect. I believe Miami is 5-6 points better than Drake without Omier. Moving on to the 4-13 matchup in the Midwest region, we've got the 4-seed Indiana Hoosiers taking on the number 13 seed in Kent State. Indiana comes in 22-11. They finish third in the Big Ten, 12-8 in the conference, and they sit 30th in both the net and KenPom. Kent State, on the other hand, 28-6, 15-3 in the Mid-American, finishing second in the conference, just behind Toledo, who they defeated in the conference championship. They sit 59 in the net and 71 in the KenPom. This might actually be the shortest line I've ever seen on a 4-13 matchup. Indiana sits just a 4-point favorite. We have not seen a lot of line movement on it. Indiana just shy of -200 on the money line, and Kent State you can get at +160. Total sits at 140.5. This is a very, very interesting matchup, largely because Indiana is extremely inconsistent, and Kent State is a really, really good basketball team. Looking at the breakdown of this matchup, Kent State comes in as one of the better defensive teams in the country. They're 38th in defensive efficiency according to KenPom. And one key factor to look at is three-point percentage. Indiana shoots the three ball at 37%. That's 35th in the country. Kent State, defending the three-point line, 28th in the country, allowing teams to shoot 30.9% from three, significantly below the national average of 34%. That's going to play a big role here. If Kent State can defend the perimeter the way they normally do and limit Indiana to some tough threes, I think that they can have some success here. Looking at another key factor, Kent State's defense, really good at forcing turnovers. They forced 22.6% turnover percentage. That's good for 20th in the country. Indiana, not a bad team taking care of the ball, but outside the top 85. And I think Kent State's going to be able to turn Indiana over in this one and create some extra possessions. When you look at the other side of the ball, Kent State, they take care of the ball better than Indiana does, 59th in the country. But more importantly, Indiana forces very few turnovers. 296th in the country in turnovers forced. So when you think about the turnover battle, which can be a key issue in upsets, you got to win the turnover battle. I think Kent State will be able to do that in this matchup. The knock on Kent State is definitely their three-point shooting. They're not a great shooting team, as you can see here, just above 33% from three, 217th in the country. The good news is Indiana really doesn't defend the three-point line all that well. They defend it at the exact same rate that Kent State shoots it, 33.2%. So you can kind of imagine that's right where that number is going to fall in this game if the law of averages maintained. Where Indiana is better defensively is defending the two. Luckily for Kent State, they don't rely super heavily on 2-point shots. And so I think they'll be okay when it comes to shot selection and getting the shots they normally do. Indiana, good at defending the two largely because of personnel, and that is Trayce Jackson Davis. Trayce Jackson Davis is clearly the best player for Indiana. He is an All-American. He's playing in his final year at Indiana, and he's had one heck of a year. He would have been the player of the year in the Big Ten if it weren't for Zach Edey. Outstanding player. He's going to play a big role in this one. Jalen Hood Schifino has turned into what a lot of people are saying is an NBA prospect. He's a very good guard that will give them some offense. Shoots the three ball at 35%. But the key guy for me is this guy right here, Sincere Carey. Sincere Carey for Kent State, transferred over from Duquesne. This is his second year at Kent State. He is a guy who is capable of putting up 30 points on any given night. Outstanding guard, gets to the rim extremely well, shoots it at 47% from two despite being just 6'1". The one knock is that he's not a great three-point shooter this year. He's shooting it just 30% from three. But on his career, he's actually closer to a 34% shooter. I think in a big game, he's going to step up and hit some big-time threes. He shoots 81% from the free throw line. He's efficient. He takes care of the ball. I really like Sincere Carey, and I think he's going to be a key factor in why I think Kent State is going to actually pull this upset. One other last little nugget of information here. Early in the year, Kent State played Houston. That game was a 2-point difference. Kent State only lost that game by 2 points. They played Gonzaga on the road. Really, really tough. So this is a team that's not going to be intimidated by Indiana, by the pedigree of the Indiana program. This is a team in Kent State that has some real veterans on their team. They're a tough-nosed team. They're very, very talented, and they are primed to make a little bit of a run here. And I think this is an outstanding matchup. To be honest, I was looking to fade Indiana in pretty much any spot unless it was just a bad mid-major. But I love this matchup for Kent State. Indiana, extremely inconsistent. They rely way too heavily on Trayce Jackson Davis. And their guards just have not played all that well and all that consistency. So I like Kent State to pull the upset here. Give me the Golden Eagles in this one. Moving to the 6-11 matchup, we now know that the Pittsburgh Panthers are the winner of the play-in game of the first four in Dayton, defeating Mississippi State by 1 point tonight. They will take on the number 6-seeded Iowa State Cyclones. The Cyclones finished 6th in the Big 12, 9-9 in the conference, 19-13 overall. They're 20th in the net ranking and 33 in the KenPom. The Pittsburgh Panthers, on the other hand, 22-11, 14-6 in the conference. Surprise team out of the ACC. They were picked to finish 10th in the conference, finished 5th. Jeff Capel won ACC Coach of the Year. They are 67th in the net rankings and 77th in the KenPom. Unfortunately for Pittsburgh, I believe the ride is going to end here. It was good for them and for the building that program to get an NCAA tournament win, given it was in the first four. But even against a Mississippi State team who really just can't shoot the ball a lick, they're the worst three-point shooting team in the country. Literally, they're 363 out of 363 teams. And still, Mississippi State had a shot to win the game late, had a wide-open tip-in layup at the buzzer to win it, and it just didn't fall. And so I like the Cyclones in this one. When you look at the breakdown between these two teams, Iowa State, massive difference in their KenPom rating, obviously. Also, massive difference in their two teams' defenses. Pittsburgh comes in 135th in defensive efficiency. Iowa State, top 10 in the country. And what I think Iowa State is a better version of Mississippi State. They're a version of Mississippi State with a better offense who can shoot the ball better than Mississippi State can. Obviously, they don't shoot the ball fantastic. You can see here they shoot three ball just at about 34%, but that is significantly better than Mississippi State, who shoots under 30% from three. When you look at the Cyclones, what they do, again, very similar to Mississippi State, very good offensive rebounding team, right? 27th in the country in offensive rebounds. Mississippi State killed Pittsburgh on the offensive boards tonight. That's what kept them in the game. Pittsburgh, almost 200th in the country in opponent offensive rebound percentage. When you look at Pittsburgh, I've already said in multiple times in these breakdowns, I believe the ACC was very down this year. It's partially why Pittsburgh was able to finish fifth in the conference, but they struggled mightily down the stretch. The last win Pittsburgh has over a tournament team came back January 28th, where they defeated Miami at home. Since then, their 6 wins include Georgia Tech twice, Syracuse, Boston College, Florida State, and Louisville, until obviously tonight. That is 6 teams with a grand total of 0 teams in the tournament field. So Pittsburgh really hasn't seen a team like Iowa State in terms of their talent in the last month and a half. I really like Iowa State. I know they didn't play all that well down the stretch, but they did finish their season with 2 big wins. They have a very good backcourt in Jaron Holmes and Gabe Kalsher. Both guys shoot above 34% from 3. Kalsher can really score it. Holmes is extremely talented as well. Both guys are 6'4". And really, when you look at Pittsburgh, their one guy that you have to worry about is Jamarius Burton, and I think they're going to be able to take him away, largely because everything Burton does is in the mid-range and down low and close to the paint. And you look at Iowa State defensively, they do a great job defending the paint. So I like the Cyclones in this one. I think Iowa State's going to win this one pretty handedly. They don't score enough for me to think that there's a ton of value laying a significant amount of points here. If I were to see this go, I haven't looked at the line yet, but if I were to see this get to anywhere around 3, I would absolutely consider a play on the Cyclones. Do keep in mind that there is almost always been one team that wins in the first 4 that's able to move on to the second round. I don't think it's going to be here, but just be wary of that fact when you're picking your brackets. Moving on to the 3-14 matchup here in the Midwest region, we've got the 3-seeded Xavier Musketeers taking on the 14-seeded Kennesaw State Owls. The Owls come in finishing tied for first in the A-Sun. They finished 15-3 in their conference, 26-8 overall. They sit at 115 in the net ranking and 127 in the KenPom. Xavier, on the other hand, comes out of the Big East. They finished second in the Big East, which was very competitive this year, 15-5 in their conference play, 25-9 overall, 22nd in the net ranking, and 16th in the KenPom. Xavier sits at an 11.5-point favorite currently. That was bet down from 13.5, so he did see some professional money on Kennesaw State. If you want to bet Kennesaw State money line, you can get them currently close to plus 460, and the total sits at 151. When you look at this game, Kennesaw State comes in. They tied for first place in the A-Sun, but they were actually the 2 seed in their conference tournament. They met the number 1 seed, the Liberty Flames, in the conference championship. I would have actually had the Liberty Flames at a 13 or even possibly a 12 seed had they won that game. But Kennesaw State really played a great game in the championship game. They pulled the upset over a really good Liberty team, got into the tournament, and are sitting at a 14th seed. I think Kennesaw State is a very, very good team. They're a team that, if they maybe were given a little bit of a better seed, would have a chance to pull an upset, because I think that conference with Liberty is pretty good, and it's impressive that they were able to win the conference tournament and tie for first in the regular season. But I think Xavier just has way too much firepower. When you look at the Musketeers, they're the 8th ranked offense overall in the country, and Kennesaw State's defense is 118th, and that's a big discrepancy there. And you look, what does Xavier do really well? They shoot the three ball better than almost any team in the country, third in the country in three-point percentage, right? And you look at Kennesaw State defending the three-point line. They are 233 out of 363 qualifying teams. So Xavier going to get great looks from three, as they always do. And when a team is trying to pull an upset, you need some distinct advantages. And unless they just find a way all of a sudden to defend the three-point line really well, Xavier's going to have a matchup that they really like to exploit. The best thing that they do, Kennesaw State does poorly, or defends poorly rather. So that's a key factor to pay attention to. When you look at 2-point percentage, it's similar as well. Xavier 38th in the country in 2-point percentage. Kennesaw State almost 200 in 2-point percentage defense. Same with effective field goal percentage. Xavier's in the top 10 and Kennesaw State's outside the top 200. And one other key factor is if Kennesaw State were able to keep this close, if Kennesaw State were in the game late, which, could happen. One really, really important factor is free throw shooting. And the Owls are one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the country. They are 329th in the country in free throw percentage out of 363 qualifying teams. If this comes down to a close game late, the advantage heavily favors Xavier. Kennesaw State, very poor free throw shooting team. Like I said, I really think Kennesaw State isn't a bad team. I don't think Xavier is some juggernaut, but I think they're just going to be too much offensively for the Owls. When you look at Sean Miller, the coach of Xavier, he really has not done all that great in the NCAA tournament. He tends to do a poor job of exceeding expectations. They either fall to their seed number or lose to a team they shouldn't. Oftentimes that happened when he was at Arizona. But when you look at the couple of upsets he did have in the first round, they tended to be against really good defensive teams. This Kennesaw State team is not that. The last time he was upset by a double-digit seed when he was back at Arizona, they played the 12th ranked Buffalo University, and that was coached by Nate Oates, who is now the head coach at Alabama. And they upset Arizona handedly in that game, and they did it with being physical and playing really good defense. I don't think that's happening here. Give me the Musketeers in this one to advance to the round of 32. Moving on to the 7-10 matchup between the Texas A&M Aggies, the 7 seed in the Midwest region, and they come in 25-9 on the season, 15-3 in the SEC, where they had an outstanding close to the season. Not only did they finish second in their conference, but they made it all the way to the conference title game, where they fell short to Alabama, the number 1 overall seed. They do also have a win against Alabama in the regular season, given it came at home. And they sit 19th in the net ranking, 25th in the Ken Palm. They're taking on one of the hottest teams in the country, the 10th-seeded Penn State Nittany Lions. The Nittany Lions come in 500 in conference at 10-10, but had a great close to the season, 22-13 overall. 9th in the Big Ten, although that Big Ten standings were very clumped together. The 2nd seed and 8th seed were separated by 1 game. They sit 48th in the net ranking and 39th in the Ken Palm. This is one of the most fascinating matchups of the first round, in my opinion. I, like a couple of these games, have gone back and forth on this game probably 10 different times. And I've convinced myself that one side is going to win. And then I convinced myself of the complete opposite 10 minutes later. It's going to be a really, really fun game to watch. I think this is going to be one of the best games of the first round. It's 2 of the hottest teams in the country, 2 of the teams playing their best basketball as of late. And that's what you want to see in the NCAA tournament. I do think both teams kind of got a bad draw, because I think if Penn State faced one of the other 7 seeds, they would have a good chance to pull the upset. Now that they don't here. And then you look at the Aggies, I think they're probably the team that got the worst end of the stick in terms of seeding. I saw them as at least a 6 seed, maybe even a 5 the way they finished the year, but the committee penalized them for what they did early in the year, which is they really struggled and lost to some teams that they shouldn't have. When you look at this matchup, it's extremely even. What's really interesting about the matchup is that when you look at the four factors, which are good determinants of predicting winners oftentimes, everywhere Penn State seems to struggle offensively, that's where A&M tends to struggle defensively. Wherever Penn State tends to struggle defensively, that's where A&M tends to struggle offensively. You can see that here with offensive rebound percentage, free throw rate. Penn State, one of the worst teams in the country at offensive rebound percentage, and one of the worst teams in the country at getting to the free throw line. A&M outside the top 270 in both of those categories defensively. You look at what Penn State does well on the defensive end, offensive rebound percentage and free throw rate defensively, both top 43 in the country. A&M elite at both of those categories. So it kind of comes down to two teams who are really kind of match up well with what each other wants to do. One key factor, though, that I have trouble getting over in wanting to take the Aggies in this spot, and that's 3-point percentage. Penn State, 9th in the country in 3-point percentage, 38.5% from three. And when you look at the Aggies over here, 32.8%, 245th in the country. It's really hard for me to get past that when you look at two teams that are really even. And, you know, A&M just isn't a great shooting team. They have shot the ball better as of late, but they don't shoot the ball well from three in general. One key factor that I'd like to talk about, though, that I think could be a big determinant of who wins this game is A&M's ability to get to the free throw line. If you can see here, their free throw rate is 3rd in the country. They are absolutely elite at getting to the free throw line. When they do, they win. When they don't, they struggle. Penn State does a very, very good job of not putting teams on the line. They're 38th in the country in that regard. That's going to play a massive role. If Penn State can limit fouling, as they normally do, keep A&M off the free throw line and force them to shoot the ball in the half court where they are outside of the top 240 in both 2-point and 3-point percentage, Penn State will have a great chance to pull the upset here. On the other side, if A&M does what they normally do and gets to the free throw line at a high clip, gets to the free throw line, knocks free throws down where they shoot a very high percentage, top 40 in the country, close to 76%, A&M has a very good chance to win this one going away. Looking at personnel, another key factor here, I think A&M has some really good players. They're probably the more complete team. They've got Wade Taylor, point guard, who has been outstanding for them. He gets into the lane well, shoots the floater extremely well, an 88% free throw shooter, and has been shooting the three ball extremely well. They have a lefty, number 23, in Tyrese Radford, who is kind of the combo or the pair to Wade Taylor. Those two guys together really are the head of the snake for A&M, and they've got some other nice pieces around them. Radford, not as good of a shooter as Wade Taylor, but he's a great attacker of the rim. On the other side of the ball, as I said, Penn State, not as complete of a team, but they do have the best player on the floor, and that's Jalen Pickett. Jalen Pickett is an elite basketball player, and he has really carried this team to the NCAA tournament when it looked like they weren't going to make it. He shoots it at 38.3% from three, 56% from two, 77% from the free throw line. He averages close to 20 points per game, and he's an elite basketball player. And he may just be the difference in this one. I keep going back and forth on this one. I can't get over the fact that Penn State doesn't foul and A&M relies a lot on free throws to get to the free throw line. But, and I'm changing my pick here in the spur of the moment, in hope of having a Texas A&M second round matchup, and a belief that in some weird way, subconsciously, the officials are going to want the same thing. I'm going to take the Aggies here. It's going to be a close one. I would not bet this game. You have a better chance of picking the winner if you flipped a coin, and I am definitely not going to lay any points in a game that could come down to the last possession. But I'll take the Aggies in this spot. Who knows? Maybe I'll flip it in 5 minutes and think I should take Penn State. But I like the Aggies here. Total coin flip game. Rounding out the Midwest region, we've got the number 2 seeded Texas Longhorns taking on the 15th seeded Colgate Raiders. The Longhorns come in one of the hottest teams in the country after winning the Big 12 Conference Tournament. They finished second in the Big 12 at 26-8, 12-6 in the conference, which clearly was the best conference in the country. They're seventh in the net rather, and sixth in the KenPom. The Raiders, on the other hand, outstanding season in their own right, 26-8 on the season, 17-1 in the Patriot League, where they finished first in the regular season and won their conference tournament. 101 in the net ranking and 117th in the KenPom. Not going to spend too much time on this one. I'm picking the Longhorns in this matchup. Preface this by saying I'm a huge UT fan, but I will also preface it by saying I'm a very big pessimist. I often think the Longhorns are going to find a way to lose, but I'll try to give my most unbiased breakdown of this game and of the Longhorns' chances going into the future of this tournament. When you look at the Longhorns, they have the makings of a national champion, top 20 in both offensive and defensive efficiency, according to KenPom. That's something that 12 of the past 14 champions have had. They're 11th defensively and 18th offensively. When you look at the Raiders, the thing that they do well is they shoot the ball extremely well. In fact, they shoot the ball better than anybody in the country. Number 1 in effective field goal percentage. Number 1 in three-point percentage. Number 7 in two-point percentage. Oddly enough, they are one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the country, which makes absolutely no sense. But the Raiders, although they shoot a very high percentage, their strength of schedule as it relates to their offense, 343rd in the country out of 363 teams. So those numbers are extremely skewed. They're not going to shoot that well against teams like Texas, who are top 20 in defensive efficiency, close to top 10 in the country, who play in an elite conference. Colgate has been in the tournament the last couple years. They've been a high seed. They've been unable to pull off an upset. And I think it's largely because this step up in class from the Patriot League is just too high. Can Colgate somehow miraculously pull off an upset? Absolutely. Why? Because it's the Texas Longhorns, right? One other team can hire a coach and have thinking that you have a chance to win a national championship, and within a week go from possible national championship to coach fired for beating his wife. Only at Texas. But that said, I do think going forward in this tournament, I will bring up the coaching aspect. And Rodney Terry, I will start by saying, has done a better job than you would imagine anybody filling in that type of situation as an assistant coach could ever do. That said, Rodney Terry was an assistant coach for Texas for a reason. He has never won an NCAA tournament game as a head coach. He's been to one in, I believe, 9 years as a head coach. And he really hasn't done an amazing job if you think about it relative to Texas's talent. Texas has a team that is, arguably the most talented, but definitely one of the most 5 talented teams, and lost a number of games that they shouldn't have lost. As I said, really tough situation, and I'm not dogging on Rodney Terry, but I believe if there's a reason Texas loses going down the stretch, I think the reason is Rodney Terry. His lack of experience in NCAA tournament games and having to all of a sudden make a deep run, that's going to be tough. That said, Texas is a really experienced team, has a lot of extremely high talented players. They're 7th in D1 experience. They're 112th in bench minutes, so they're actually relatively deep for a team that's in a power conference. But last factor I'll talk about with the Longhorns is this. Timmy Allen did not play in the conference tournament. Texas won the conference tournament. I actually believe they played better without Timmy Allen. Now, that said, Timmy Allen is an outstanding player. He makes Texas better. I'm not saying he makes them worse. But what it forced Rodney Terry to do was to play Arterio Morris. Arterio Morris was an All-American recruit. He's a freshman, and he's a guy who really brings more shooting to the table than Timmy Allen. Timmy Allen's more of a mid-range, attack the basket guy. Arterio Morris is a very good three-point shooter. He's explosive. He's athletic. Timmy Allen, more of a crafty guy. And, it forced Terry to play Morris. I'm hoping it opened his eyes to seeing that he needs to open up the rotation a little bit down the stretch if Timmy Allen does come back. But I don't think that would be a factor if Timmy Allen didn't play in this first couple games of the NCAA tournament. I actually think it would benefit Texas. They're playing outstanding basketball with the lineup they had this past weekend in Kansas City. So that's all for the breakdown of the Midwest region. I'll go ahead and give you my pick for the region. I do have the Longhorns coming out of that region. That may be a biased pick as I'm a Longhorns fan, but I actually really like their road to the Final Four. The toughest matchup is going to be obviously Houston if both teams get there in that Elite Eight. I don't love the second round matchup as both those teams, Texas A&M and Penn State, are really hot. But I think Texas is just too good of a team to not make it to at least an Elite Eight this year unless their coaching does them in. Hope you guys enjoyed the Midwest breakdown. I'll be back with a fourth video where we'll break down the final region and we'll finish up this first round of the NCAA tournament.